I had awoken in purgatory, confronted by my own self, or a ghost of my past at the very least. To be honest, I didn't have much of a clue what was going on. I had tried hard to forget my past and the insanity that had driven me to such wanton acts of cruelty. I tried to stop him, but how does one stop that which has already been? I clawed at him, tried to hold him back, but it was like grabbing a handful of smoke, and I was forced to watch as my past self butchered and murdered the married couple within. After it was all over, I sat upon the grass outside and wept. But was I weeping for the murdered couple within, or was it for myself? Knowing my past actions had condemned my soul to eternal damnation. I closed my eyes, wondering if this nightmare would ever end. Nope. A voice chuckled from above me. I gasped, my eyes flying open. I was back in Lucifer's great hall. The Dark Prince himself grinning down at me from his golden throne, all decked out in a fitted black suit and burgundy tie. For you, it never ends, Mr. Davis. Your soul has been condemned to eternal damnation. In other words, your soul belongs to me. Now stand up, stop your wailing. It's grown tiresome over the long years. Years, I said, wiping at my face and climbing to my feet. What do you mean years? Exactly what I said. You've been gone for quite some time. Time is different over there compared to here. How long? I asked, trying to keep the anger from my voice. How long did you abandon me there? Tut tut, he said, shaking his head. Abandon is such a harsh word. Besides, you had a mission to accomplish. Didn't go exactly to plan with all the weeping and self-pity, but it did prove a point. After all, he didn't cast you out or try to destroy you. Quite promising, wouldn't you say? You know, Lucifer, I said, growing tired of his games, I don't have a fucking clue what you're talking about. At this, he bursts out into a deep, rumbling laughter. Mr. Davis! It gladdens me to see that you have still some balls left. But, to answer your question, 10 years you're over there, sat weeping in the realm of purgatory, that place between the glory of heaven and the eternal damnation of hell. And he let you stay, he said, and greedily rubbing his palms together. That means he's still neutral in all this. Who? I asked, my curiosity overriding my rage. Who's neutral? He sighed, then becoming bored of the whole damn thing. Death! He glared at me. My brother, the angel of death. And he has a part to play in the whole thing, and for now, it would seem he intends to follow the words of prophecy. I opened my mouth to ask another question, but he was suddenly there before me, black wings exploding from his back, his forehead pushing against my own, and I could feel a terrible heat radiating from him. Yes, Mr. Davis, he hissed. Do you have another question? I'm here, after all, to serve your every will, whimsy, and desire. No, master, I cried, falling on my knees before him, smothered in his hatred and madness. The heat intensified all around me, and I screamed, gagging on the smell of my own smoldering flesh. Only when I lay prostrate and broken before him did the burning torture cease. Forgive me, he said, reaching down and dragging me to my feet. Things are quickly coming to a head. I find myself a bag of nerves these days. I didn't dare ask him what he meant by this. Besides, I was too busy checking my skin, which was still mercifully intact. Anyway, he said, sitting back down upon his golden throne, black wings curled about him. Back to business. I have managed to locate another one of our wayward souls while you were on your little holiday of self-discovery. Tell me, Mr. Davis, are you, by any chance, any good with a sword? He grinned at the look of horror upon my face, clicked his fingers, and then I was falling. I awoke to the sound of weeping and groaning, the smell of smoke heavy in the air. I tried to sit up, but I could barely move. I was encased in something that groaned and creaked as I rose my heavy arms, wrenching what I correctly believed to be some kind of helmet from my head. I immediately looked down the length of my body and I burst out laughing. I was in armor, dressed head to toe in steel plate armor. I was laying on a battlefield, the dead and dying all around me, fires burning, fallen banners shuddered in the wind. You have got to be kidding me, I sighed, my head falling back into the mud. Not even a little bit, a small voice croaked off to my side. Quickly I turned my head and looked into the beady eyes of a large crow. He was perched upon the body of a dead man, happily feasting on the red ruin where his nose had once been. Enjoying yourself? I've had better, the crow said, shredding flesh falling from its sharp beak. Are you going to lay there all day? Shouldn't you be about our master's business? The blade's over there, it said, nodding towards a gutted horse in the saddlebags. Oops, it said, wings fluttering. Looks like we have company. That said, it quickly flew away, landing on a low-hanging branch of a nearby tree. Just then, a face came up into view. It was a tall man with a scraggly beard, blood-soaked bandage covering the top of his head. Sir Stanley, he beamed, grabbing me by the arm and heaving me to my feet. We did think you dead, good sir. Not yet, I said, smiling back at him. It is good to see you, sir. Come, he said, placing a gauntlet-covered hand on my back. We have set up camp to yonder forest. The evil of Draven has been defeated for now. We have burned the bodies of these dead men. They shall no longer rise to plague the living. I said nothing to this. Now was a time for listening and gathering information. Besides, this man obviously knew the man whose body I was now inhabiting, and I didn't want to give myself away. And so we started trampling through the mud towards the waiting camp. Wait! I cried, suddenly remembering the Hellbound blade. Quickly I trotted over to the dead horse and rummaged through the soiled saddlebags, coming up with a blade which began to glow ominously at my touch. What's that? The other man said, his eyes growing wide as he gaped at the glowing blade in my fist. Witchcraft. Have you forsaken our most sacred cause, my lord? Has your soul been polluted by our most foul enemy? His voice grew louder, more frantic. Just then, the crow landed on my shoulder. You're gonna have to kill this fool now, before he draws the wrong kind of attention, it squawked into my ear. It doth talk, the tall man said, his face going deathly pale. Yeah, I said, plunging the blade through his gaping mouth. It doth. I would like to tell you that I felt something watching him die. Regret, sympathy, even the old bloodlust that used to burn through me like white-hot fire, but I felt nothing. Only a cold detachment as he bled out the last of his life into the mud. Nicely done, the crow said, nodding its head in approval. It would seem you are becoming just the man our master wants you to be. I ignored that. It's Draven, I presume. He's the one Lucifer wants me to track down. And what did this one mean? I said, towing the dead man's side. About the dead plaguing the living? Draven is a necromancer, and a powerful one at that, able to raise the dead to do his bidding, the crow replied. A gift given to him by our master in exchange for his soul. When his time was up, Lucifer collected. But now, he's escaped hell's clutches, and our master wants him back. So, get to it, Mr. Davis. And just like that, he was gone, sailing up into the sky. Soon, he was nothing more than a dark smudge against the encroaching night. The first thing I did was take the bloody bandage off the dead man's head and wrap it around my own, before trudging towards the distant camp. By the time I arrived, it was almost full dark, the flapping tents and fluttering pennants only dimly lit by the surrounding campfires. The sharp tang of vinegary wine and roasting meat perfumed the air as men sat about, talking softly as they warmed their hands by the fire's flickering glow. Whoever's body I was now inhabiting had obviously been a well-liked fellow. I was greeted boisterously by whomever I passed. It was one of these men who approached me on the run, bowing lowly. "Sir Stanley!" he exclaimed, almost falling over on his feet. "I did pray to all saints in heaven for your safe return to us." Thanks," I said, feigning some confusion and rubbing at my bandaged head. "It is I, my lord," he said, looking at me with some concern. "Did you not recognize your most old and faithful servant, Stephen?" Of course, Stephen, my old friend. It is good to see you again." "You are hurt, my lord. You must go see the surgeon at once." "It is of no accord," I said. "A slight bang to the head, nothing more." I could tell he wanted to argue, but didn't quite dare. "In that case, my lord, the Duke of Argyll wishes to see you in his tent. He commands all captains to attend him, to make hasteful plans against the most vile and hateful Draven. Come, my lord," he said, leading the way. "We must make haste." I followed him into a large tent. The inside was large and ostentatious, with a large oak table surrounded by armored men. Their decorative armor showed their wealth and rank. At the head of the table stood a large man with a great, bristling beard. His piercing green eyes watched me closely at my approach. The man, who called himself Stephen, bowed low and quickly scurried away, leaving me alone under the heavy gaze. A man to my right, dressed in chainmail with a flowing black cloak, coughed politely. "Are you quite well, my lord?" I turned to him, a strange smile on my face. "Quite well," I replied. "A knock to the head, a trifling matter." "It is good to see you alive, Lord Stanley," the bearded giant rumbled. I could tell by his bearing and place at the head of the table that this was the man in charge, the one Stephen had called the Duke of Argyll. Taking a chance, I bowed ever so slightly. "My thanks. May the Lord God give us victory over our most hated enemy in the days to come." That seemed to please him, and he waved me into position around the great table. "As you know," he said, slamming a great fist into the table, "the vile necromancer Draven has escaped our clutches and retreated to his mountainside keep. I myself did see this coward flee in terror, as his forces were so rudely routed by our most valiant troops." At this, the knights around the table let out a roar of approval, laughing and slapping one another on the back. When the noise died down, he went on. "This battle was won, but the war is far from over. We must make haste, my lords, and lay siege to his most haunted homestead. He must have no time to raise another army of the dead against us, and so I propose we break camp at first light and apprehend our despicable foe. What say you, lords?" Again, they all roared their agreement, and the meeting was adjourned. I left quickly, hurrying into the night. There I found my man, Stephen, waiting for me. "Is all well, my lord?" he asked, drawing close. Yes. We break camp first thing in the morning. Now, take me to my tent," I said, trying to feign the same superior attitude I had observed by the other lords. "I am hungry and battle-weary, and would sleep before our journey doth begin with the rising sun." "Of course, my lord," he said, bowing low before leading the way, flaming torch held aloft as we made our way to the eastern edge of the camp. At my approach, men climbed to their feet with a clanking of iron and steel, all of them bowing low, and I realized that these were my own forces, blood-stained and weary from a hard-won battle. I acknowledged them with a smile and a nod of the head, before being led into my own tent. The inside was far less grand than the tent I had just left, but still comfortable, with glowing braziers, rust-covered floors, and small, comfortable benches. "Come, my lord," Stephen said. "Let us get you out of that armor." I stood there as he fumbled with straps and clasps until at last I was free of its heavy grasp. Stephen laid my armor upon a wooden rack before scurrying outside and quickly returned with a steaming bowl of delicious-smelling stew and a flagon of nutty brown ale. I ate the stew quickly, enjoying its rich flavor before drinking the watery ale and heading for a nearby cot. As soon as my head hit the pillow, my eyes closed, and I fell into a dreamlike sleep. I was awoken early the next morning by Stephen, the sun only just staining the horizon. "You must wake, my lord," he said, shaking me gently. Your men are all assembled, and the captains do gather on the hill to lead our armies into glorious battle. Great, I mumbled. Another day dressed like a tin can. My lord? Stephen asked, his head cocked quizzically. Never mind, I grunted. Just strap me into the damn thing, let's get on with it. Of course, no such thing happened. Instead, Stephen insisted that I eat first, bringing me a watery-looking porridge and some more weak ale. I began to wonder who was the master and who was the servant here. Still, I found myself growing fond of the fussy old man who carried his great master with an almost superstitious zeal. After I had eaten and been poured into my armor, I was led outside. What I saw there filled me with the utmost dread and horror. There was a horse waiting for me, a huge war horse covered in armor, a massive beast, a head taller than myself and heavily corded with muscle. I was a city boy through and through, and in my former life had never even touched a horse. Nevertheless rode one. I think I shall walk today, Stanley, I said, nervously glancing at the great beast before me. The look of horror on his face quickly had me feigning laughter. A jest, good Stephen, to lighten the mood. He visibly relaxed and quickly called for two boys who placed a wooden stool before me. Taking a deep breath, I climbed upon it, placing my hand upon the creature's back, noticing the swinging stirrup. I'd seen enough John Wayne movies to know at least what this was, and thrust my foot inside and threw my leg over, landing heavily on the horse's back. The beast snorted angrily and pawed at the earth, my clumsy mounting, but fuck the damn thing, I was more than a little happy I hadn't landed on my ass. I sat there wondering what to do next when Stephen grabbed up the reins and led me towards the waiting captains. We were soon on the move, myself and the other knights in the lead, our men following close behind in good order. We moved through the lush countryside and green forests, and by mid-afternoon, we left the woodlands behind and entered a great green meadow, dotted here and there with small lakes and running streams. In the distance, a mountain range ran from east to west before crumbling into rugged foothills. There, the Duke of Argyll pointed towards the mountain range. There is where we will find the home of our loathsome enemy. If we ride hard, we can be at the foot of the mountain before nightfall. Look yonder, my lord! Another mounted man exclaimed. Smoke in the valley! A village, perhaps, Argyll said thoughtfully, burned and pillaged by Draven's retreating army. I volunteer to take a look, my lord, I said, nudging my horse forward, wishing to learn more about my enemy's power. Very well, Lord of Stanley. Take a handful of men, go see if any doth survive. We shall continue on our journey. Be swift, unless you miss the great battle to come. Very well, my lord, I said, signaling to a handful of men as I rode away, the ever-faithful Stephen by my side. The village was a large one of its kind. At least they had the good sense not to burn down the tavern, one of the men snickered as we dismounted. Search the streets. See if you can find any bodies, he commanded, drawing my sword, Stephen by my side. The old man was now dressed in a rusty chainmail shirt, a pot-like helmet on his head. In his hand, he gripped a short stabbing sword. Old-looking, but with a keen edge. Be careful, my lord, he wheezed as I gently opened the tavern's door. When no attack came, I entered, keeping a wary eye on the lengthy shadows, but there was nothing. Only overturned furniture, broken pottery, and the smell of stale beer lingering in the air. Over here, my lord, Stephen said, a tremble in his voice. I turned and strolled towards him, taking in blood-spattered walls. Must have been a hell of a fight, I said, placing a comforting hand on the old man's shoulder. Aye, my lord, he said. But where are all the bodies? I haven't seen so much as a dead dog since we entered this place. It feels all wrong, my lord. This place reeks of evil. Steady, good Stephen, I said. Just a few more moments, we shall join the rest of our forces. As we stepped outside, a man came on the run. We found the church boarded up and locked. We called out to the survivors, for we heard noises within, but they would not answer. I fear they're too afraid, my lord. Take me to them, I said, following closely behind. As we ventured down the hill, a small, rickety-looking church came into sight, Thankfully, the church was still intact and looked free from any burning or looting. "Come out," I commanded, using my most lordly voice. "You're safe now." But there was nothing, only the sound of rustling and scratching within. "Break it down," I said to the nearby men who approached the door, swords and axes raised. As soon as the first blow was struck, the doors were suddenly thrown open, and a horde of dead men poured out. It was villagers, slaughtered and razed by Draven's terrible power. "It's a trap!" Stephen screamed. "No shit!" I cursed, drawing my sword. "Get behind me!" But it was already too late. With a cry of outrage, Stephen charged in, slashing, grasping hands and yawning mouths. "Damn Stephen!" I cried, wading in after him. A dead man leapt out in front of me, gray eyes glaring with hate. Its black teeth darted from my throat. Quickly, I threw up an armored arm. Feeling the creature bite down, I rammed my sword into its guts, its steaming pipes and organs splashing into the dirt. And still, he would not go down. "The head, my lord!" one of my men screamed as he went down under the weight of the dead. "Fuck this!" I cursed, throwing down the cumbersome sword and dragging the hellbound blade from under my armor. The blade burst into flames as I rammed it in the creature's back, instantly turning the vile thing to dust. Half crazed with fear and adrenaline, I waded into my tormentors, slashing at their rotting faces and desiccated limbs. Wherever my blade sliced flesh, the dead burst into hot, flaming dust. After what seemed like hours, I stood alone, my men all fallen beneath the onslaught. The ashes of dead men at my feet, stirred only by the growing wind. From my right came a whimpering groan. It was my manservant, Stephen, lying on the ground. The old man's face was covered in bite marks. His hands hovered like crippled butterflies over his torn and bloody guts. At my approach, he tried to shuffle backwards, but his legs would not work, and he slumped down, his head in the mud. "Stephen!" I cried, falling on one knee beside him. He saw the glowing blade in my hand and began to thrash. Quickly, I cast it away, cradling the dying man in my arms. "Be still now, good Stephen. It's gone." "Who are you?" he asked, his lips covered in blood. "You are not my master. You are not the man I raised as a boy. I saw you fight amongst the dead," he gasped. "You were smiling as you thrust that accursed blade into them again and again. You reveled in their deaths." "No, Stephen, it is I lied, trying to bring him some comfort. He raised a shaking hand and touched my face. "Imposter." He spoke his final word, the light dimming from his eyes, and he said no more. "Shame that," a voice growled from behind me. "The old fool died too quickly. Still, if it brings you any comfort, his soul flew straight to heaven." I turned enraged, but stopped when I saw the great wolf that stood before me. "Lucifer," I sighed. "The one and only." He grinned, revealing dagger-like teeth. "You're not going to start that weeping and wailing again, are you?" "No," I said, scooping up the blade and cutting the armor from me until only a chainmail shirt remained. "He was a good man. He should be buried." "Why?" Lucifer chuckled. "Rats need to eat too." I said nothing to this. I was angry at his disregard and tired of being his lapdog. I feared the things I might say, and the inevitable punishment that would follow. Lucifer, perhaps, sensing my mood, ceased his mockery and continued. "There is a goat path that leads through the foothills and up into the mountains to Draven's castle. There is a cave there that leads to his dungeon, an escape route if the Dark Wizard should ever be cornered. I will guide you there while Draven is distracted by the Duke's armies. You will slip inside and kill this oath-breaker. Come now," he said, loping off into the growing shadows. "It'll be dark soon, and we have a far ways to go." The climb up into the mountains was a treacherous one, even more so as the shadows lengthened and the day gave way to night. Lucifer was sure-footed, as only a wolf can be. I, however, stumbled and crashed through the forest, holding my breath as we edged our way across narrow ledges and crumbling boulders. At last, we reached the narrow cave entrance, and I could hear the roar of battle from above us. Unable to contain my curiosity, I climbed a little higher to the base of Draven's castle. There, through the pines and swaying spruce, I could see the Duke's forces as they assaulted the castle's reinforced main gates with a stout battle ram. From above, the defenders poured hot oil and cast down huge rocks upon them, decimating the Duke's forces. "Not going too well, is it?" Lucifer panted in my ear. "But that's not really your concern, although it may comfort you to know that if you slay Draven, his power shall diminish and his forces will go back to their natural state of decay. Just think of all the suffering you can prevent with a single stroke of your knife." I said nothing to this, but clambered back down to the cave's entrance. "You coming?" I asked him as I looked inside. "Not me," he chuckled. "This is your kill, not mine. Besides, I can't interfere with this. It must be you that delivers the final stroke." "And why is that? Why is it you don't claim these lost souls of yours?" "There is a reason for everything, Mr. Davis, and soon you will know more, perhaps more than you care to know. But for now, you must work alone. I do, however, have a gift for you," he said, jumping up and placing his paws upon my shoulders. Before I could even react, he licked my face with his steaming tongue. With a cry, I pushed him away. "What the hell are you doing?" "Look above you, Mr. Davis. Tell me what you see." I suddenly realized that was it. I could see everything. It was like the night had been driven back and I could see almost as clear as daylight. "You should see the look on your face," Lucifer chuckled. "Stick with me, kid," he laughed, "and all the powers of hell shall be yours." That said, he howled up at the moon and loped away into the darkness. I entered the cave with more confidence, weaving my way past sharp-fanged stalagmites, sure-footed as a cat in the darkness. At last, I came to a small set of stone steps, carved out of the very bedrock. Drawing the blade from my belt, I snuck up the stairs, wincing as my booted feet ground and scraped against the dust and grit of centuries. At the top, I came upon a thick iron gate that seemed to lead off into a vaulted chamber of thick, dripping stone. Taking a deep breath, I put my shoulder to the gate, dug in my heels, and pushed with all of my might. But the gate would not budge. Locked, or perhaps just rusted shut. Either way, I was in a world of trouble. Feeling incredibly stupid, I waved my hand over the lock, but nothing happened. "Yeah, you could have given me that power," I mumbled. "What are you?" a small voice squeaked from above. "A Jedi Master? Use the blade, idiot." It was a bat, hanging upside down and glaring at me with beady eyes. "Lucifer, is that you again?" But the creature had already gone, flapping away into the night. "Yeah, well, fuck you too," I called after it, before raising the hellbound blade, which burst into searing blue flames before my eyes. Quickly, I pushed it against the metal lock, looking on with awe as it slid through the metal like a hot knife through butter, until at last there was a clunk, and the smoking lock fell from the other side. Wasting no time, I put my shoulder into the gate, and with a squeal of rusted hinges, it reluctantly gave way. I stood there for a moment, tense, waiting to see if the noise had attracted any unwanted attention, but there was nothing. Only the faded noises of the battle raging above. Moving silently, I entered the room, seeing the barred cells all around me, and realized I was in some kind of dungeon. I looked into a few cells as I passed, but there was nothing but molded bones, crumbling cloth. Keeping my back against the dripping stone wall, I rounded a corner and almost ran smack bang into a waiting guard. This one was thankfully alive, his eyes wandering as he emerged out of the gloom. Hurriedly, he fumbled for his sword but did not attack. "Who are you?" he demanded. "How'd you get here?" I have come for your master Draven, I said, wielding the Hellbound blade before him. I'm gonna send him straight back to hell. Good, the man said, much to my surprise. He's lost his mind, what little of it was left. The way he looked at me. He shuddered. You know what he told me? He told me I'd better serve him dead. So I knew he wanted to make me into one of those accursed things. A slave. You should see what he does with them. For the women, I mean. His face turned deathly white. I am not a good man. I've killed, murdered, slain other men. But I swear by the blood of Christ, if I survive this night, I shall join the priesthood and spend the rest of my life atoning for my sins. Here. He tossed a bunch of keys at my feet. Those will open any door in the castle. Draven is in the main hall, surrounded by dead men. Now tell me, how did you get in here? And is there a way out? Yes, I replied. There's an old gate that leads to a small cave system. After that, a goat's path that leads down to the mountainside. My thanks. He had thrown down his sword and hurried past me. Remember your oath, I called after him. Trust me, friend. You don't want to suffer the torments of hell. If he heard me, he gave no sign, but hurried away. I scooped up the keys and carried them up the stairs. Here I encountered another stout door. This one was also locked, and after fumbling with many keys, I found the one that fit and pushed the door open, just a crack, peering into a narrow hallway, hung with moldering tapestries. I was just about to step out when a dead man shambled past, then another, and another. Following closely behind was a weasel-faced man who cursed them roundly. Move, you sack of bones! Quickly, quickly now! Get to the battlements! As he passed, I reached out an arm, wrapping it around his throat and dragging him through the doorway, kicking it closed behind him, dagger at his throat. If his dead companions missed his company, it didn't show as none came to investigate his sudden disappearance. Who are you? The man squealed, feeling the cold steel against his throat. What do you want from me? I want you to take me to Draven. I grated in his ear. Show me the way to your master. You're mad, he gasped. People run from Draven, not at him. Mad? Friend, you have no idea. I dug the blade a little deeper until the blood began to flow. Okay, he gasped. I will take you to him. Will we encounter any more guards along the way? Doubtful, he replied. Most of us are upon the battlements, trying to defend the castle. That's good then. I heard Draven is in the main hall. Take me there. No. He's gone to the tower now to watch the battle. It's close. Real close. I can take you there. Just please don't kill me. Good. You may live yet. Now let's go, I said, kicking the door open, blade at his throat. Quickly we shuffled down the hall and through old rooms, filled with decaying drapes and rotting furniture until at last we came to the base of the tower. There I took hold of his greasy hair, dagger at the base of his spine. He headed up the winding stone staircase, the sound of dying men and clashing of steel ringing in my ears as the battle continued to rage outside. When we neared the top, he suddenly stopped. Just round the bend, Draven's quarters. He'll have Meredith with him. I'll go no further. I shall not look on that monstrosity again. Who's Meredith? I asked him, but he only shook his head stubbornly. Draven will know I have betrayed him. I must leave this place at once. You're right, I said, grabbing him by the back of his neck and the seat of his breeches. You should leave. He let out a single scream as I ran him into a nearby arch window before casting him into oblivion. If he screamed again, of which I'm quite sure, it was drowned out by the sound of raging battles below. Okay, Draven, I said, approaching the stout wooden door. Here I come, ready or not. I put my shoulder into the door, expecting it to be locked, but it swung open easily, and I strode in. The room was round and large, decorated with flowing black tapestries depicting all manner of morbid scenes. Draven himself was sat upon a throne made entirely of human bones, a dark pulsing aura undulating around him. But it was not this that drew my attention. With the thing slumped by his side, The thing had obviously been a woman, but now was an amalgamation of many parts. It didn't have 2 arms but 4, crudely stitched into its enormous ribcage, from which large, sagging breasts hung down, the nipples replaced by glaring eyes. The skull was broad and flattened, the jaw heavy with a drooling, lipless mouth, and just below this, in the throat area, was a second mouth, larger than the first and filled with piranha-like teeth, from which a blackened tongue protruded, as if tasting the air. "How do you like her?" Draven chuckled. "My magnum opus, Meredith." "You're one sick puppy, Draven. Can only imagine what Lucifer has in store for you down in the pit." "And you think that you'll be the one to send me back?" he scoffed. "Let me tell you something. The Dark Prince lies like others breathe. Bit of a pact he's made with you. Bit of a promise. He'll break it. No, I piss on Lucifer, and I will piss on you for all eternity. Meredith," he commanded, "destroy this fool and bring me that pretty little knife of his." As soon as the words left his mouth, the creature leapt to its feet with frightening speed for one so big, but I still had the dagger, and the slightest nick upon the creature's flesh, and he would be nothing more than dust on the wind. With a roar, the creature charged me, trying to grab me up in its crushing embrace. I ducked low, meaning to slash its side, but the second set of arms caught me mid-swing, snapping my wrist, sending the hellbound blade clattering across the room. Draven instantly leapt from his chair, and with a roar of triumph, scooped it up. But his roar turned into a bellow of pain as the bone handle turned white-hot at his frenzied grip. Howling, he cast the blade from him, sending it spinning across the room. The creature now had me by the throat. Hammering me against the wall, in an act of sheer desperation, I reached out and grabbed one swinging breast and rammed my thumb into its glaring eye. The creature roared in pain, rearing back and giving me enough space to raise my knees, and pisted my legs forward, catching it hard in the midriff, breaking its grasp as it stumbled backwards. Enraged and half-blinded, straight into Draven, sending them both tumbling to the ground in a mass of flailing limbs. "Titty twister, bitch," I coughed, massaging my throat as I grasped up my blade. The pair had already managed to untangle themselves, the creature up upon one knee as Draven dragged himself away, one leg completely shattered. "No, you don't," I said, advancing on the thing, but it was already moving, rolling into me, knocking my legs from under me, sending me sailing over the top of its massive bulk and slamming me into Draven's great bone throne with mind-numbing force. I felt something in my skull give, and my vision began to fade, but only for a moment, as my bones began to re-knit and heal. Still, I lay there feigning unconsciousness as the creature crawled towards me, its drooling mouth chomping with anticipation. I didn't move, not even when the creature tore into my leg. I had endured all the torments of hell. This held little to no comparison to me. "That's right," Draven screamed. "Eat him up, Meredith. Eat his man parts. Geld that lapdog of Satan." The creature reared up, meaning to do just that, and as it started on its downward strike, I suddenly came to life and rammed the hellbound blade into its gaping mouth. Instantly, the creature exploded into hot ash and bone, showering the room with its grisly remains. "No!" Draven screamed. "Oh, I'm afraid so," I said, staggering to my feet, feeling my torn and battered flesh already beginning to heal. "Tell me," I said, stamping down on his shattered leg. "Does it hurt much?" The piercing scream he delivered pretty much told me it did. So I did it again for good measure. In fact, once I started kicking him, it was like I was unable to stop. By the time I stuck the knife in him, he was begging for the death he had so cruelly denied to so many. I obliged him, sending his tormented soul to eternal damnation. And once again I was falling into Lucifer's great hall, only this time I landed on my feet. "You're getting better at this," Lucifer said from his golden throne. "Is it me?" I asked. "Or is this getting harder?" "Oh, definitely," he chuckled. "And still 2 more to go." "So where to next?" I asked, eager to be put out of his presence. "The Wild West? Ancient Rome, perhaps?" "No, Mr. Davis. I said our wayward souls were displaced in time. I never said strictly in the past." Wait, you mean... He overrode me. As a great songwriter once said, the future is uncertain. And in the end, is always near. The future, I guessed. You have to be shitting me. He grinned, dropping me a sly wink. And once again, I was falling. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and thank you for watching tonight's video, or listening to tonight's podcast. I want to tell you about one quick thing before we say goodbye for the evening, and that's going to be about the MrCreepyPasta plush. The plush is only available for a limited time, so if you guys head over to makeship.com, then you guys are able to get this MrCreepyPasta plush. It's super cool, it glows in the dark, which is really cool, and he's super soft and cuddly. So it's makeship.com/products/MrCreepyPasta-plush. Or you know what's easier? Makeship.com. There you go. And as always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who is supporting me on Patreon. If you guys have been supporting me on Patreon, or if you're considering doing so, then know that I just added in a couple of cool things for the loyalty program because I found out that I could. I had no idea that I could do that. So now, you guys should be getting some cool things in the mail brought to you by Patreon that are pretty cool. They support the channel as well. Oh, getting to the point though, a huge thank you to patrons, such as Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Brian Arce, Bobby Karman, Stephanie Butler, Tristain Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, William King, Heather McDonald, Reaper61167, Alex the Sandwich, Darth Miver, Michael Ortiz, Satanic Aries, Ness69420, aisodoehtraed with 2 exclamation points, Nessie, Ronnie Hansen, BardoHawk764, Melancholy Corpse, Ferb, Harley, Billy Morrow, Madam Skullbunny, Sashi Sazaku, Grizzly Olsen.pro, Kayden the Spooky Boy, Zane Nightshade, My Body Sounds Like Rice Krispies, Ashwood, Lord of the Weeds, Jay, Miss Exandra, Mr. Unsettling Spaghetti, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Azarine Fox, Fried Chicken 12, Freddy Krueger, Ty Nanny, Michael Scarborough, Infernal One, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Jordan Elves, Hades Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Tommy Green, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nina Smith, Nico Cayo, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, Trey Smiles, and Corey Kenshin. Thank you guys so much, so much for being a part of the Patreon and helping me keep the lights on and helping me get exclusive stories and everything we do on the channel here. Thank you guys so much for being a part of it. Thank everybody in the description, and thank you guys who have stayed to this part of the video. It really means so much to me. I hope you all have a very happy Halloween and sweet dreams.